good friend Jason have been visible. We've been doing audios for a long time, and
Yeah.
we've taken the plunge to come back once a month to do a live where we summarize what we've talked about for the whole month. So, welcome everybody. Welcome, Jason. And
Hey.
we'll be back after just a short video.
Hey.
Hello, Jason. How are you doing? Welcome to another episode, and thanks for joining the live and doing the live. It's been a while since we've done
It
these.
is. It's been a long while. It's been probably about 5 or 6 months because we've been continuously doing the audio. And for some reason, the settings with Restream connecting to LinkedIn has maybe thrown the times out, but that's all good. Today, we're really talking about, and we've been talking about specifics over the last 3 weeks about the sales mindset. And we've been looking at different areas within that. So we've been looking at your positive attitude, your resilience, your growth mindset, customer-centric focus, and solution orientated time management. There's lots of different facets around that. So we're really delighted. Just put it all together and welcome Keith as well.
Great to be here. Looking forward to this session immensely.
Excellent. I'm delighted that you finally got the technology okay and you tick the boxes and it's going live on your streams as well. So we're absolutely delighted. So let's talk about this. What mindset do you need to be as a sales top performer? We're talking about the top of the top, but what does it take? Because the challenge is there are people with a great mindset, but what does it take to really be successful within this? I've had lots of discussions with people around this, and we've been discussing this over the last few weeks. So let's have a look at this and let's break it down. What sort of questions do we need to ask people?
Well, it's a very good question, Jason, to start with, because really, if we talked about a lot of different questions and a lot of different mindsets, and I think we categorize them into different parts of your mindset when you want to be a good sales post or um sales rep, sales agent, salesperson, right?
Yeah.
But we talked about the ethical. We finished the month off by talking ethical stuff, and that just what you've just said there. Anytime I'm doing a project with a customer, regardless whether it's sales, whether it's operations, whether it's leadership, business owners, the first thing I always talk about the personal brand and the business brand. And I don't mean like the visible logos or anything like that. I'm talking about what you stand for, your mission, your principles, your values. That is your anchor all the time, and everything should come from there. It's the same with sales. If you reel that into your personal brand, what do you stand for? What are your values? What is your mission? What are your principles? And that really comes into the first question, like, how do we line ourselves up with integrity?
What about yourself there, Keith? Because we'd like to elaborate a little bit further on. When we talk about that integrity, what is integrity and what does it mean for the salespeople out there that have integrity, but how can they use it to make sure that they have that driven in the mind and the mindset to make sure that they use it with their clients, but also with themselves and probably with their teams as well? So there's probably a 3-facet area within this, what we need to be speaking about.
Yeah, well, integrity is someone once said is what you do when no one else is watching. And we all come across every single day of the week people that tell you kind of one thing, but actually behave in quite another way. And over a period of time, that's going to catch you out and bite you in the backside at some point. So for me, integrity is living your values, and it's first of all, I think it's getting the basics right. And I'm looking in the mirror as I say this. Turning up on time, that's a really good thing, and that's integrity. I did some interviews last week where some people came up, and stuff happens, and there are three things that are always going to catch you out, or can always catch you out in presentations. And events like this, and they are young children. Well, I haven't got any of those hanging around. They're animals, none of those, and there's technology. Well, I've got plenty of that, and here we are. I was 2 minutes late, and my apologies, but I apologised, and that's the other thing. But when I did these interviews last week, 2 out of 6 turned up on time, ready to go, and straight away they didn't even have to open their mouths. They're ahead of the pack compared to everyone else, right? So everyone else is starting from what I would call a deficit position. They're late, no apologies, and it's very hard to recover. You only get one chance to make a good first impression, somebody said. And I know we're talking about basics here, but actually, do you know what? Unless you can get the basics right, nothing else. For me, nothing else matters. If you can't even get the basics right, we're never going to get to. And I'm at risk of dominating the conversation. Just want to make another point.
I think you're absolutely right, because that's a big bugbear of mine, of not showing up on time. But the key thing is communication. If there was communication there, and I've been a result of that, and I remember ages ago going into a meeting into town, I was bang on time. I was, just because of the way I am, I'm always before time, and I'm waiting around, having a coffee or sitting in reception. But I sat down and I was sitting for 45 minutes. And in the end, I just got up and packed my stuff up and went off. I went, this is just not on. No communication back to me to apologize that they're late. No communication back to me to say what's happening. I just packed up and I sent an email going, sorry, you're not there. And I was actually the salesperson. I was actually going in there and said, sorry, you're not there on time. I have to go. My time is important to me. It's how I show up, and it's how I respect their time, but also respecting my own time as well. What's important to me? What about you, Shay?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have lasted 45 minutes, Jason. So fair play, right?
No,
it's
just one of those.
Just, and I totally agree, by the way. And it's not, and like, look, if I have a bit of time to spare, maybe I'll hang around. But like you, my calendar is fully booked, so I have to be on time for my next meeting. So I'm going to make sure I deliver that. And if there's no turn up at a certain point, I need to use my time to value. And to go back what you said, Keith, I think is really important, to live your values, right? And we need to be reminded of them all the time. We need to remind ourselves what's good, what's bad, what we like, how do we show up all the time, right? How do we present ourselves, how we look, how we dress. This is why I believe personal branding is paramount. It's paramount for everybody. But I believe with salespeople, it's even more important, right? Because you have to and we all have our routines.
Yeah.
Like I was doing a master class last week on Zoom, right? I actually put on obviously my formal clothings, but I also put aftershave on. Even though I'm just here, I did that because that's part of my routine if I'm going out the door to meet people. And that's what I want to feel I've accomplished everything I need to do to be me on it. I know it sounds silly, but that is what I did, right?
I think there's a direct correlation between feeling good in yourself and having that. You know, the age-old thing is you smile into the phone when you're speaking to someone. And there's, I don't know what it is, that psychic connection, or the other people feel something about what and how you actually are presented. So when you breathe correctly and when you smile into the phone and you do stuff with your body and your body language, it resonates with other people. And it's exactly what you just said there. It probably resonated with other people because you're feeling good about yourself. And in order for you that it resonates with other people.
Agreed. And I think it is, to your point again, Keith, get the basics right.
Yeah.
And some of that is how you show up to the world when you're on time, how you dress, whatever, but also up here. What are you going to do to stick to your values, your principles, and how you, and then we morphed the conversation on during the course of the month about to be customer centric, to be problem solving, to be other person focused, right? So this is again turning up with that in your mind. So you're not thinking of just, I need to close a deal. I need to close a deal to reach my targets, right? What's the right thing to do to reach my targets, or make sure I'm focused on the customer's pain points so then I can deliver for them, right? And a part of my masterclass, I was talking about sales last week. And one thing I always say, and I thoroughly, firmly believe this inside, the goal of selling is not to sell. I always say that, right? And there's a few reasons why I say that. The goal is to build a relationship, number one, right? Two reasons why. First of all, you give yourself a better chance of getting the sale, number one. Focus on rapport. And then you can evolve the conversations to, is there a good fit, right? And if there is a good fit, then there's a good chance the consequence of building the relationship is a sale. That's number one. So what happens when there's not a good fit and there's no point in moving forward? Then, however, that person may open their network to you and say, well, I know somebody who could use your services, right? So you build a relationship and then you open up over time. If there's a good fit, they'll hopefully open up their network to you. So that's why I firmly believe relationship first, and getting that in your mindset is very important.
Yeah, and that's some really good shouts, actually. I'm reminded of the old adage, "What's worse than no business?" And bad business is really bad. And so, how do you work? But people will say, "Well, what does bad business mean?" Well, bad business depends on your business model. It might be very low margin. God, I wish I hadn't taken that deal. But actually, especially in more complex deals where lots of people are involved, strategically, you may not get on at all in terms of personality, fit, chemistry, whatever other words you want to put into that. And if you're constantly at each other's throats, if there's some sort of clash of culture or of ego, corporate acquisitions are famous for unmasking all of this. When it's too late, the deal's already been done. You've got to try and find a way of making it work. So, bad business is literally bad for business. And I introduced someone to a deal earlier on this year, and they joined the company. And somebody's persona turned out to be, we were talking about ethics just now, somebody's persona turned out to be very different when you start working with someone. And in fact, just yesterday, they've called it a day. This just isn't working. And it happens. But it's much better to find that out earlier in the process than when it's too late. I've helped them reverse out of that. But it happens, and it happens all the time, are we going to work together well? And sometimes you just can't. So it's good to find that out earlier rather than later.
I suppose it's all down to that relationship as well, that you've had that relationship and you pass it over to someone else thinking that they're going to make it good. But obviously, maybe for some reason in their head, they didn't have the right skills, the ability, or the mindset to actually have that proper conversation with that person. Your consistency is you. That's your consistency, that's your power. You're very skilled at what you've done, but maybe when you do pass it over to someone else to carry on, the way they deal with things is totally different. They might have turned up for meetings late. They might have just not communicated effectively, and that all goes down to what we think and do and how we operate as a business. We have Yoram in the room. He's messing around with technology and obviously cameras and stuff like that. Welcome, Yoram, and thank you for everyone that's listening as well. Please put any questions within the chat. We'll be happy to answer any questions that there are. If you have curiosity as well and you want to get involved, we can actually add people within this as well. Just message myself, Shay, myself, or Keith, or Yoram once Yoram's got himself sorted. Can you hear us, Yoram?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Excellent. So we're talking about mindset. We spoke over the last 3 weeks as you've been involved in majority of the conversations, but we spoke about integrity, also relationship building, but consistency as well. So what's your take on this, building up and into the conversations that we've had over the last few weeks?
Your sound is gone, Yoram.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
I think my thumb must be holding my phone and just knocking the mute button. I think it's actually, I think one thing that is, I've said this before and I'll say this again. I think the value of a relationship is being grossly underestimated these days. And I think especially, I mean, I'm a tech savvy person, whatever you want to call it, and I'm a big believer in it. But I think we're very good at features and benefits, but we realize people buy from people they trust. And it's important to build that relationship quite quick. And it's possible. I was speaking to somebody who basically his job is really to sell loans to people with not the best credit in the world. And he has to move, it's quite high volume. It can be a lot of repeat business as well, especially as people may have their own businesses growing. But he has got minutes to win their trust. The people he's been to are busy, they're bouncing along. He has to win their trust. And I think one of the best ways to develop a relationship and win that trust is be somebody they want to speak to. And I think we're very sometimes a bit overexcited about what a product could do. So we feel passionate, we're excited, we want to share it. And we sometimes, it's very easy, we sometimes have to breathe and like, this is great, but will they understand what difference it's going to make to them? And I think features and benefits should only be there to explain how we're going to make their world better. I know this is sales 101. I know we all know this. If it was that easy, none of us could make money instead. So pray for it could be quite difficult to do. And we're up against people, let's be blunt. The good thing about sales is most salespeople, unfortunately, aren't that great, are really making the efforts. So you only have to make a bit of effort and put a bit more practice and thought into how you go about your job to be one of the top 20%, 10% with ease. But if I feel good about working with you, Jason, I don't want to go to Keith. And if Keith, now, if Keith can, by the way, blow you out of the water, I will go to him and that relationship will go. So I'll say a big thing. You better make sure that somebody else doesn't come along and show them they're way better than you are. But it's much harder than Keith. I mean, obviously, anybody listening to this, Keith is a wonderful person. Do plenty of business as well. You owe me $20, mate. But in serious, I think when I will give you a very personal example. I once had a Honda car in the UK, and I'll spare all the examples that happened, but they treated me so well, and I wouldn't say it was quite nice to drive. It was reliable. It's so easy to deal with it. The car just went in for what they called it an oil change. In the UK, we call this a service. Everything was like so smooth. And I was always thinking, if I buy another model, if I even go up market, but I'm going to lose that service, do I really want to do that? Even though the car might ride, another car might have a better ride, etc. So this is the same thing we do. And all the more so, if you have something which you and people don't really understand, they're going to ultimately judge it by you. Now, I'm not saying people won't buy from you if you're a complete liar. That does happen. People may be terrible people, but are very good salespeople, have very good products. But when you build that relationship, you'll be amazed how much more you can do.
Yeah, and that very well said, Yoram. And you mentioned something I wanted to segue back onto about if you're like you're all motivated for selling your product to a customer, right? I always believe, and I'm looking to hear your thoughts as well, that if you go in overexcited, right, that can often have a negative consequence with the person you're selling with. Because one, they may feel uncomfortable. They may feel comfortable if they're that type of person. They may feel comfortable. So you have to be very careful on how you present yourself, and it should always be with the motivation aligned to what you're selling, not to what you believe you're selling sometimes, because if you try and overdo it, that could have a negative consequence. And all these sort of subconscious things people are thinking in terms of, like, can I trust this person? He's very excited about something that's not very exciting, you know? So it's all about matching the motivation to what you're selling.
Yeah.
Shay, I was just about to jump it. Sorry, because we're all quite excited about that. I think you're excited, but let's not confuse excitement with passion about what you do. But you have to relay your passion for the industry that you work in, but naturally assuming that you want to give them obviously that passion, but you also want to ask them lots of really good questions about them and their business, and be excited about their business and be passionate for their business as well.
That's a different point, Jason. I agree. If you're passionate about their pains and goals, that's different.
Yeah.
But if you're just passionate about features and benefits, right, that's different. What's your thoughts, Keith?
Do you know something? I was at lunch with a student today at a business school on my doorstep, and she's fantastic energy. Really excited about working with me. We'll see how long that lasts, by the way. but she's fantastic, and we sat down with her lecturer talking about putting on a sales module and all of that. And the lecturer is quite a conservative individual. And I'm imagining it's a salesperson walking into a chief financial officer's, you're really excited. And we're all told you've got to swing from the chandeliers and all of this, which is very yesteryear. If anyone's telling their sales team they've got to swing from the chandeliers and, run and go somewhere else. But that's my opinion. But so mirroring,
I totally agree. Yeah.
So that passion that Jason was just talking about, and which Yoram has referenced, I think comes from within. People can tell. Grown-ups, forgive me if that's pejorative, but grown-ups can tell the difference between excitement and passion. And passion is where you need to be, and your energy should pretty much match whomever is across the table with you, because I'm reminded of the child that's in the Trafalgar Square, let's say, or Bryant Park, one of my favorite parks in the world, if you know that one, Yoram, who wants to feed the pigeons, and they run into this great big massive pigeons with some breadcrumbs, and all the pigeons fly away is because they haven't matched energies, and the pigeons are flying away because they're frightened. They don't know what it's going to do, and that at a human level that can happen too. And so you have to match your energies so much to it. And lots of people will say any idiot can sell, and I just don't believe that. So there's more to this than kind of meets the eye. But I suppose I would say that, wouldn't I?
I think any idiots can go into a sales meeting, but actually closing the sale. I'm going to sort of second everything that you said. I think, Shay, you answered, like Keith alluded to, you answered the question yourself. I think, listen, I will say one thing. If you can't be passionate and excited about your product and the solutions you're going to bring and the way you're going to transform the prospects of clients' lives, forget even just their business, their lives day to day, then nobody can be. I mean, you've got to, but I think it's also a matter of finding that balance. Like you said, it's interesting. I was watching somebody yesterday talk about how you should conduct yourself in an interview. She said, you know, for job interview, you obviously we express ourselves a lot with our hands, not so much. But she says, sit there, have your pad open, put your hands on the table. Don't spread out and take out the whole table. They're going to think, what the hell? But walk in there with us and sit up straight. So you're ready in a commanding position, right? And therefore you're ready like, okay, this one's standing up. And I think it's interesting. I was actually interviewing some people recently. One candidate who, this is, I think, what I thought was very interesting. She was a candidate role and she's decided not to go through, and I think she made the right decision. We were blown away. She was fantastic. She walked in, she was very confident, she was very self-assured. She was very calm, even though we had technological issues. She felt, but got it just right. She didn't feel like talking down at us, but she was asking us questions which made us think. She was trying to, we were saying something. She says, well, wait a minute, how's this going to work? Is this one going to be here? How are they going to be at the same place at once? You know, she's asking some really great questions. It was, I think by the end of the interview, and we got response from her saying that, you know, it's not for her. I think realized it's just not going to work for her. She's a very capable individual. This might just not be the right fit, which she realized. But she said, hey, listen, if you want some help finding some other candidates, I'm happy to do so. So I thought it's a great thing too. If you can come in with that passion, that energy, and you may have a conversation, you know, and what's the worst? It's not for them. They're more likely to recognize you.
Yeah.
But if you come in there, like you say, Keith, swing from the chandeliers, and it's much harder to do it virtually. It is hard. I sat there with people who've done these things virtually and they're bouncing out full of energy. And like, you can hear the people talk about them afterwards. Like, you know, I get what you said. It does make sense, but golly, my head's spinning. You know, they didn't think we could hear them. So it is mirroring. It is sort of, I would say, setting the tone and adapting it to them. Which is what we're saying, like you've got to be there for the clients, but you've got to get them thinking in a different way.
Yeah, and I would just go a little. I totally resonate with that mirroring. Your energy should match initially in the beginning, and then if the conversation is going well, then you can lead it a little bit without being aggressive. You can lead, and here's the thing about sales: like if you want to know how you're doing in a meeting, you have to be able to react and adapt very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So you have to be looking at all the different signals, like their tone of voice, their body language, the nuances to see, are you going the right direction? Do you need to change your tact and try something different, you know? So to your point, Keith, anyone, and you said it, Joran, too, anyone who says sales is easy has never been in sales. Like we've all been in sales here. We all teach sales, but we all sell for ourselves. I know how difficult it is. Sometimes I feel like, what am I doing? Am I useless? And even during the day, I go up and down like this when I'm doing my sales stuff.
Emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, it's an emotion.
Very easy when you're selling.
Yeah.
What?
It is. That confidence.
Sales is very easy when you're selling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I will say one thing though. Sorry, Keith. I'll be brief. I think just a quick tip on what you said is, we sometimes jump in when we answer. It never hurts, even especially in a meeting, not just, and more so on the phone, to breathe, wait 3 seconds. The worst thing they're going to say to you is, are you still with me? I'm like, yeah, I'm just processing what you're saying. So let me get this right. Are you
Actually, do you know what? That's a really interesting point. When you're not in the same room, when it's on a video call like this, you do lose some of those dynamics, obviously.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you guys, but I actually, you know, sometimes customers can say something that's really quite, oh God, that sounds really patronizing, actually. I know we're live, so we can't scrub that. But customers can say something which really causes you to think. So when that does happen, and it actually happens quite a lot, I'll actually say, do you mind just hanging on a few seconds while I process that? And I look away from the camera. So I'm disengaging, I'm cutting that link, if you like. Does a couple of things. First of all, that buys me time to actually think about. So, but I've told them what I'm doing. I said I just want a few seconds. And do you know what? It does over and above actually buying me time thinking about what they've said. It also pays a silent compliment that they've said something which you will
Love
take
it.
care to think about, consider, respond to. And I think there's some that I would like to think not everyone does that. And if you do it in a way which is really, well, I hope professional, empathetic, all those kind of words, you're actually standing out as a professional.
I totally agree with
I
that,
agree.
Keith. And there's been plenty of times, and I've learned this the hard way. I always thought I had to have an answer for everything, right? And don't get me wrong, when I have a very specific process before I go into a meeting. I do the Murphy's Law questions that I could potentially be asked, right? We all know Murphy's Law.
You are
And
the one person on this call that is allowed to talk about
Murphy's Law. But I'm going to tell you, Murphy had a brother, right, who also had a law. And he says what can't go wrong can actually possibly go wrong too, right? So I always do the Murphy Law questions. So and you won't get them all. You'll never get all of them. But the whole idea is you're doing more learning for yourself before you go in, right? It's helping you question more. So you're more prepared. And then if a question comes up and you answer in a sharp way, you look confident, right? So that's fantastic, right? But here's the thing, to your point, Keith, you're not supposed to have an answer for everything. And nor should you, because then you look like a know-it-all, right? And that can go from confidence to overconfidence and cockiness, right? So it's very useful to be honest. And again, we talked about integrity earlier on, and just that's a really good question. I don't have an answer. I will have to pull in some of my colleagues. Can I get back to you in 2 days? And when you say 2 days, get back to them in 2 days, right? Not three. If you can do it, if you think it's going to take 2 days, say three, right? Give yourself a bit of window. So then you're come across as a person that, to your point, I was asked a question, I don't know the answer, and I'm happy to admit I don't know the answer. That's a really good question.
I think that comes up with honesty,
Yeah.
really. And Keith, I really love that pausing, because if you do, it gives you time, but you're reflecting on what's being said. It takes time. If you're the one that just eagerly throws out whatever into your mouth, you're not really thinking about what's being said. And we're so eager to do this all the time because we want the sale, we want this and that. But really, let's relax back and let's just really do whatever we can to find the answer. But you're absolutely right there, Shay, is I don't know. I've called up people and I say, look, I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. But I do know people that do, that are a little bit more qualified in this area, that will be able to answer that question for you. But I will write that down and I will take note. And another really core thing, a really smart guy said, if you're actually with the person and you're being honest and frank and open and you're speaking to them one-on-one, I always like to say, would you mind if I record this as well? And I tell you the reasons why is I'm not going to remember everything. And if I can take a note, or if we're in a Zoom environment or whatever, I will ask them first, do you mind if and I've done it plenty of times over the last couple of years, I record it and then I review it afterwards and I go, I missed that point. I will email them. And then I'll come back with them with a whole load of flurry of questions around the discussion that we had. But in person, I would ask them again. I would just put the phone on the table. Is that okay if we record? Just because I might miss something. We're only human at the end of the day. And it's that big T, trust, connection, and all of that other stuff. But it helps to build that rapport. If they're not happy with it, fair enough. You can go, well, I won't. But if you don't ask, you don't get. And that also comes up with being a bit fearlessness as well, with asking those specific questions that maybe other people don't necessarily ask. And being fearless is also about pushing through your daily boundaries and going, well, picking up the phone and answering and speaking to people. That takes a lot of fearlessness, and go, well, I haven't never spoken to this person before. I'm going to be doing this a lot of times as well. We've all done this, but it is about showing up, and it is about going, what do I need to do to show up and have that air of fearlessness? Some days you don't get it, and other days you do get it, and you just have to go with your emotions on those levels. I can see around the room someone wants to speak on this subject.
I have one thing I actually want to add to go back to a point Shay said. I completely agree with you. That is when you don't know the answers. Like, if you ask 20 questions and you don't know 2 out of 20, you're okay. If you know the 18 and answered it well, you're okay. No, but I think obviously be knowledgeable, but I think you can use it to get another meeting, or get that meeting, or the right people who will either make the decision or influence the decision. That's another thing we forget about. A lot of CEOs don't want to make decisions nowadays because they're not. Some of them are just cowardly, but some of them are not stupid. They know if I bring something in, then everybody's got to use it. I'm not bringing something in that they're not going to use because I've got so much going on and I don't have a fight on my hands. That's not for every product. That's a whole other section. But I think you can always say to them, that's great. Give me 2 days. Give me 3 days. I'll have an answer. And let's get why don't we get the other people involved? I said, and if they said, listen, if it's not going to be a good answer, if I don't have much to say, I'll cancel the meeting. But let's try and get everybody on for another 10 minutes and make sure there's nothing else. And I will say just the final point: if they're not responding to you a couple of days, it doesn't always be the case. But if you're having problems getting hold of them, you might not have got them as excited as you thought, and you can use that to your advantage and just be honest, say, listen, I'll be able to get hold of you. I appreciate you're busy, but if you weren't, I shouldn't be speaking to you anyway. But I might have, got a bit ahead of myself and thought you're more excited than I thought. Have you got concerns? Other question marks.
Bring it to the surface. Absolutely, Yoram. And I think that's really important. I think that's a really good shout out, because two things, like again, when you're pitching and selling and you're doing lead generation, that's a heavily time intensive process, and you want to make sure you want to get out of a particular prospect if they're not, as early as possible, if they're not interested. So it's really, really useful to bring it to the surface. So I think that's a really good call out. Another thing you said, Jason, I want to comment on, because I think it's very important too. You talked about fearless, right? So here's the thing: being fearless in what you do. But here's a question for you, and I'm sure you've had these situations. We've all do, when you've gone into a meeting and you've been very heavily intimidated by a potential person who's testing your character and resolve. And this is where it's really important, again, going back to your principles and your integrity and that lovely pink the car. Yeah. We've lost Yoram. But here's the thing, where when people are testing your resolve, it's about being able to not react and respond, because I've learned that these people, that's an intimidation and a testing qualification mechanism that they have. I'm not saying it's nice, but that's what they do. And then how you can, as I said, respond without reacting. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how to deal with people who go actively out to intimidate you in sales meetings.
I'm actually got an answer for that, but I'll let Keith come up with that first.
I can, having sold to investment banks, global investment banks, there's some really powerful personalities in that sector. Now, I know the more senior you get in organizations, they tend to be more powerful kind of personalities anyway, but investment banking seems to have its, shall we say, unfair share And there are one or two individuals that come to mind. I'm clearly not going to mention names, but both work for the same bank. And one of them was really intimidating and actually quite threatening, not just powerful or intimidating, quite threatening. And I think that was just their MO, their modus operandi, the way they operated. And I'm going to relate this to discount of hardware off of the global list price. Okay, so this guy, actually, no one's going to know who it is, but yeah, let's call one David and one James. Okay, so James, is not necessarily a nice character, but and well known reputation for metaphorically beating salespeople up. And he used to do this to me all the time. But I had one of our financial analysts do some work after doing a year with doing business with this bank. There was this guy, James, on one side and David on another side. And David was totally different. David was charm personified, could charm the birds from the trees, really nice to deal with. Everyone liked working with. All the rest of it. And do you know what? I had the financial analyst do some work. David got more discount than James. He got his stuff cheaper because, he almost seduced you into agreeing to his terms, and isn't he reasonable, versus the reluctance and all the negative emotion that went with the browbeating that I used to receive from the other person. At the end of the day, I'm not going to say the words, but there is an element of, you know what, I'm just not going to concede anymore, and so it can be really unproductive having that kind of mindset. Can cost you real dollars.
Yeah, interesting call out, Jason. You're going to say something there.
I was thinking of something slightly different. I remember going into a client probably about 15 years ago, booked the meeting, and everything was going. They were halfway there when I spoke to the meeting, and then two of them just sat there, and I was going within the meeting. They were trying to hardball me, but they were just joking around as well. And I was going, well, this meeting isn't the way that it should be. From the initial booking of the meeting to everything else, they agreed the lines. They knew exactly what they're going to do and went through the lines. But when I got there, they were acting like a couple of children. And in my head, halfway through the meeting, I just went to them and said, is this something that you're really interested in, or are we wasting our time right now? Because I'm getting a sense from you now that this is something that you don't want to go any further with. If you do want to go further, let's have a conversation about maybe how I can add some value to it. But if it doesn't, look, I'm more than happy to thank you and say my merry well, and thank you so much. And I shall speak to you soon. And hopefully we can just keep the doors open at some stage. And it just carried on like that. And I'm not sure whether they were playing a game or whether here's another person that's doing something. But I set the meeting up and I set the agenda, and I set the agenda in advance. But they were acting like a couple of kids at their end. And I just got that funny feeling in my stomach. I just wanted to leave. And that inadvertently, I just said, thank you so much, guys. Please come. Let's keep the doors open when you are ready. Let's have that conversation. I don't think you're there right now. So I was holding my own and it's been a little bit ballsy. And I think sometimes you just have to go, this just isn't going to work. And whatever happens, it's just not going to happen. So thank you so much. In my head, let's be more productive with my time.
Yeah.
Thing on this. Bear in mind, when they are like this in the sales, think what they're going to be like as a client.
Yeah.
Let's be very blunt. If you want to have plenty of business, unless you're very successful and your growth is limited, you're going to deal with some interesting people. Let's put it like that. But I think you really got to understand where they're coming from. I think you get the point. As I've gone into meetings, the person can be my manager could not get through with him. I did. I closed the deal, and I think he fancied himself, especially got promoted. I wouldn't say he went ego or went to his head, but he quite fancied himself as a bit of a and he would bring up every so often and explode. Usually it was their fault when there was a problem. But the key was not to react. They want to be clever and they want to be different. Just be above that all. And I always was. I wasn't aloof. I wasn't rude. And we actually had a good relationship with him and he recommended other people. And I just, and people I said, it's fine, just tell him you're dealing with it. And you get some people you come to, they're just their manner. They're just like, okay, what have you got? Well, I'm busy, right? And if you, especially talk about the financial world, they're very much like moving a million miles a second. The way they speak to each other is shocking, and they're probably the way they're speaking to you is far politer than they speak to anybody else during the day. But if you show them how you can get to the point and show them how it's going to make a difference, you can suddenly see it flip. They'll do business with you, and they'll be very punchy and to the point. Listen, I've been in this meeting as well. I went there. The guy was literally speaking to his secretary, looking at me, said, "Oh, I saw you around the corner doing your web." Like, he was just a complete dick, pardon my language, right? He thought it was very clever, and he says to me, and he basically was talking about a competitor, and I said, "No, we can do this. No, the competitor do it. You can do it for less." It's not true. I said, "Okay, fine." I just politely fished me to say, "Got any more questions? You know where I am. I'll give you a call. Check out." I didn't get anywhere with him, and I basically asking questions, and I knew what would happen because I knew what he wanted to achieve, and I knew what this competitor did, and I knew why we were the right people for him. And I know what that competitor's strengths are. And, how do you put it? I was a square peg for the square hole. He was using the circle. So it slid in, but it wobbled around. It didn't hold it very well. Yeah. Right? Unlike this competitor, I had a good sense to stay away from the squares, the round hole. And then I thought, okay, let's just got somebody else to try and chase him. Exactly the same thing. And she said, leave it. If this is the person the company or organization wants to use to make their decisions, we'll find business elsewhere.
Yeah, and I agree. And I'm just conscious of time. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, and like I think we should wrap up soon because I know we've gone over our time. But I want to just add to what you just said, Yoram. Just one final comment, if I may. You can only build a winning business with winning clients, and that means you win for them and they win for you.
Absolutely.
And if you're doing business with clients who don't win for you, even though you may not be making the money you could on them, but that's not the real loss. The real loss is you're taking up valuable capacity from people who could be winning for you, right? So that's my final thoughts. I want to thank everyone, Jason, as always, and Keith and Yoram for joining us on this session. This has been really enjoyable. Yep. Always great conversations, great opinions, great thoughts, and I look forward to do it again. Thank you for your time. Very much appreciated, and have a great day.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.